So a West Midlands publican called Michael Westwood decided, wouldn't it be fun to put up on the government's petition website a petition demanding that there is a general election because Labour have broken all of their promises and it's just not good enough. Well, it is 2.7 million last time we looked, people that have signed it, and it is going up very quickly. But I have to say the rate at which it's going up may have slowed, but hey, it still may have further to run. Now, do these petitions actually make any difference? What happens is, if you get more than 100,000 signatures, it goes to the petitions committee, and they may well have a debate in Parliament or a Westminster Hall debate on a subject that's been raised, or they can, actually, if they choose, reject it. So, Ranald, what do you make of this? I mean, Elon Musk was saying, wow, I've never seen a petition going up so quickly. Have you signed?
I have signed it.
Oh, he has?
I have signed it. But I have to say, I don't think it makes the slightest bit of difference, I'm sorry to say. You know, the truth is, we have a system that says if a government is elected by a number of MPs in the House of Commons, they are able to serve for as long as they command the confidence of the House of Commons. And that doesn't seem to be changing at all. There haven't been any mass defections to my party or yours from the Labour benches. But the thing that it does do, I think, is demonstrates the huge dissatisfaction there is in the country from the broken promises from the Labour Party, from the Labour government in just over 4 months. You know, they went to the country and said they weren't going to hike taxes, and they have. They have not delivered on their promises, and the people are speaking.
You know, it is true, Scarlett, isn't it, that no Prime Minister, having just won a general election, let alone winning it with a big majority, has seen their own personal popularity sink as quickly as this, ever.
It's been incredibly tough. And we know, I mean, it's been a tough budget. It's been tough. Can I say about this petition that once Elon Musk tweeted, right, it went up massively. Yeah. It comes from 184 countries, right? I mean, the only people who matter are actually the British people. So we have no idea. I mean, it is now an international petition saying we want to...
How can a British government website be so weak as to allow that?
Well, that's it. And I have to say, Nigel, it's a shame that I didn't know you when there was a Let's Have Another Referendum petition that hit 4 million within about 3 weeks, and we're nowhere.
I think actually, Sky, I'm going to correct you there. It got to 6.7 million.
OK.
So,
right.
But I'm not saying this is the be all and end all. I view it as a bit of fun.
Yes.
Right.
But it does point, the fact the signatures came so quickly.
But they did come from
without any organisation.
I think if Elon Musk tweets, we call it organisation. I think if Elon Musk tweets something and
he only tweeted once it had started to really move.
And you have to specify a UK postcode, so you have to demonstrate that you're in a particular constituency.
But if they've looked at it, the Daily Mirror has looked at it and seen that there are...
I've seen a heat map of the UK and where people have voted from. Look, the point is, there are two big points. One is Starmer's popularity, but the other is it raises a much bigger debate. You know, Switzerland, which is a fantastically run, peaceful, prosperous country, has a form of direct democracy at national level and at local level, at canton level, and even lower than that on big planning developments, whatever it may be. We would never have left the European Union had the vote been left to Parliament. But you give it to the people, and they say something completely different to the way the vast majority of parliamentarians felt. Are we a country that could use more referendums?
Well, I mean, you know, let's look at assisted dying. If there was a referendum on assisted dying, it would go straight through.
I'm not sure about that.
Oh, come on! No. I mean, all the polling. I think if you want to have a country run by referenda, I think we would have kept hanging for a long time. I think now finally.
But if that's what people want, shouldn't they be allowed to have it?
Okay, so if people want assisted dying, can we have it?
But here's the point. If you have a referendum, you have a proper national debate, and people may well change their minds. The assisted dying one, interestingly, if you ask people instinctively, do they support it, they say yes. If you start to talk about some of the downsides, they do begin to reconsider.
No, and then their experience. I mean, I remember reading something on Conservative Home, and I was absolutely shocked. I mean, it was a woman who wasn't letting her husband have any pain relief that was going to cause him to die. And actually, all the comments were how awful it was, and of course she should be allowed to. He should be allowed to. I mean, I actually think that I found the Brexit debate incredibly divisive. It was very, very difficult. I mean, a lot of my ethnic minority friends said never, ever again.
Well,
we found it really awful.
A lot of ethnic minorities voted Brexit.
Yes.
A very large number of them voted Brexit. I mean, Randall, you've been in government. I presume you think direct democracy is a terrible idea.
And I don't think it is a terrible idea, but I think you've got to use it for the right cases. So I think
constitutional issues?
I think exactly that. I think for constitutional matters, if the government, heaven forbid, wanted to change the voting system, I know you're rather keen on this, but I think they should take that to the people, because the people have the right to decide the system.
Yeah,
I think
it was a dog's dinner, wasn't it?
I agree with you, but they did.
And the country rejected it.
Yes,
and I think
I still don't know what the system was they were proposing.
I don't understand AV at all. And I'm in favour of
devolution, likewise, in Wales, Scotland, and of course, polls in Northern Ireland. These are the things that I think you should reserve referenda for, in my view, because we elect members of Parliament to exercise
House of Lords
their
reform?
judgment. I don't know. I haven't thought about that. But I think we elect members of Parliament to exercise their judgment.
But when there's no choice, and when the two big parties basically say the same thing, there's a huge feeling out there that, where can we go, what can you do? And that explains, I think, the growth of the Greens, the growth of some of the independents, the growth of Reform. There is a kind of a gap in the market.
Yes, but also I do think that what's interesting about young people is they're very radical, and Reform, frankly, is radical, even though it might be radical on the right. The Greens are radical, whereas the other two, are very status and very and that's what it, and it's about. I mean, I felt that for years and years, 20 at least, that actually Britain's been very unhappy, and they've been very febrile. And pendulums have swung. They've liked people. They've gone off people. I think it's a very difficult
the pendulum has
time
swung
at the
back
moment.
and forth between Labour and Tory, but maybe we're seeing some bigger shifts now. I sense we are. I mean, we'll see.
Well, but I think, 2010 was very interesting because actually they didn't want anybody. I mean, that's what was so interesting about that election, is they didn't want Labour, right? Yes. They didn't want the Tories.
Well, I think that happened in 2024 in July as well. I mean, if you look at the share of the vote the Labour Party got versus us, likewise, very
I think 2024 was a punishment beating for the Conservative Party, and many would say thoroughly deserved. I didn't say me. Now, what the Farage moment actually makes me rather angry. Merseyside Police put out a tweet this morning. A man has been jailed for 4.5 years after a police officer's nose was broken during violent disorder in Southport. Sean Beach, 55, was captured on CCTV during the disorder on the 30th of July. So a guy has got 4.5 years. He's assaulted a police officer and broken a nose. And it is serious. 4.5 years is a big sentence. Whilst a few days before that, in Manchester, a couple of men violently attacked police, having caused a major scene in a shop in the airport, violently attacked the police and broke a police officer's nose. And still, there is no prosecution coming from the CPS of any kind whatsoever, which is why I'm getting involved in an attempt to push a private prosecution. Two-tier policing, two-tier justice under this government is driving people mad.
Well, I don't think you can blame the government for the Department of Public Prosecutions. I think it's very, very important that they're independent from the government. And politicians do not say who goes and who doesn't go. And it's very...
No, Starmer did. Starmer said, any of you out rioting, we're coming after you. He made it very, very clear.
And that's why the riot stopped. It was absolutely right. These people, it was absolutely right to say that I was abroad at the time. I was watching on the television. I was reading in the newspapers. The behaviour was appalling. They were terrifying. They were absolutely terrifying. They were attacking, particularly the first few nights, attacking the mosque in Southport. They were using the death of 3 little girls to come in, right, and then attack a mosque.
Because they hadn't been told the truth. There are people in prison for what they posted on social media. Some of those things may turn out to be true. Is that right?
Well, I think one of the things that isn't true is that we should burn the mosque down with Muslims inside it.
No. And that, quite rightly, has been punished. I genuinely sense that people are looking at double standards here.
Yes, absolutely. And just on the point about independence, I think this is one of the issues that has meant that nothing really happens in this country. For the last 30 plus years, this push towards everything being independent. No one has control over anything.
Interest rates, whatever it may be.
And so the creation of the Supreme Court in the Constitutional Reform Act, if any of your viewers are watching this and they Google Constitutional Reform Act, they'll think, oh, what's this little bit of legislation? It fundamentally changed the relationship between the government, the elected government of the country, and the courts. And, you know, we've never recovered from things like this. So this idea of independence, Starmer's a former DPP, Director of Public Prosecutions. He directed people during the riots, and, you know, there should be no presumption, actually, that it should be independent. It's not.
Well, I have to say, I'm very angry about it, and I sense a great
I think it's really important that we have a Supreme Court that is independent, and that we're not like America, where it depends on who the president is that
we had a very good set of laws beforehand.
Many would argue with
and there's
laws
almost
did a good
no
job.
difference, frankly, right? I think
the general point that so many decisions that affect people's lives have gone away from those we elect to all sorts of, not just courts, but quangos, is something we'll debate more and more on.